Thanks for listening to Free For All After Party from Fox 4. The best news, sports, and weather is available anytime at fox4news.com. Now, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to Free For All, the After Party podcast. It is Sammy the G. Sitting beside me a little ways over is MFD. We're back, ladies and gents. I know you missed us.
Sammy, it's been a while since we've recorded one of these podcasts. You dragged me kicking and screaming into the podcast world. And now I've been trying to get you to do another one. And you're like,
it's my fault.
I'm out of town. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. Actually, it was producer Landry who kind of has been on us to go again. It just, the timing has been weird, right? We haven't been around at the same time to do it. Or there's always been an event that made it seem kind of weird and dated. But then we decided we have to work around that.
I think we're overthinking this too much.
You think?
Yeah, so we're new to this, guys. So I think our biggest thing is when we record this, some of what we're talking about might be a little outdated, or there might be new pieces of information that come up, but we just need to get over it because we're going to talk about enough stuff to where it's evergreen, and there are some things that are going to be timely. The main reason why we haven't is because Mike and I have both been out of town really for the past 3 weeks, and so it's kind of disrupted our schedule. So we are back.
Mm-hmm.
We know we've heard from some of you saying, when are you recording it? We miss it. So here we are.
In terms of the thing we've been paying the closest attention to, obviously it's been the Mavericks. And as we record this, the series is tied at 1.
Yep.
Luka was back at practice for the first time today and talked to the media for the first time since hurting his calf 10 days ago. They list him as questionable for the next game, Game 3. So it's basically 50-50 as to whether or not he will play. I think regardless of what happens here in the next few games, it's been really impressive the way this team has gone about its business to start this series. Obviously, to get one game without Luka, I think is quite an accomplishment. I thought that after Game 1, where they had a really good shot to win that game and did not, I thought Game 2, they'd be in real trouble. You were at the AAC for that, for both games, but Game 2, as the Mavs just, I think, really impressively figured out a way to win that. And I think it said a lot about the way Jason Kidd coaches this team, about the way they play defense. And then, of course, you need guys to step up, and Brunson and Kleba were incredible. So this is really kind of a likable team, if you will. It's an easy team, I think, for fans to get behind because they play so hard. And if they get their superstar back, this team might do some damage.
Yeah, it was funny because when we were talking about the series, I thought that they were going to take Game 1. And when we go back to Game 1, there were opportunities there where the game was there for the taking. They just weren't making shots that they typically make. And then you had Donovan Mitchell go off in Game 1 for 19 points in the third quarter after he only had 2 points in the half. And that's been my biggest thing when you look at this series without Luka. The difference is, well, Utah has its superstar and Donovan Mitchell, who, even if he has a slow start in the first half, chances are he's going to go off in the second half, which he did. And then you have Bojan Bogdanovic, then you have Rudy Gobert inside. So when you look at Utah, and we know they've had their off-the-court chemistry issues and everything, and we were talking about it. We're recording this on Wednesday the 20th, but we talked about this the other night, last night, that Utah is the team that has more pressure on them right now, not the Mavericks. Because if Luka had been playing since Game 1, they could sweep them this series. I truly believe that. Just by the way, just by the roster on paper, I think if Luka had played, I think maybe the Utah could win 1 or 2. I still think that they maybe win in 5 or sweep. But to your point, the biggest thing has been, well, can they win a playoff game without Luka? And I think, if anything, they showed that they can. And I didn't necessarily think in Game 2 that Maxi Kleba was going to have the game that he did. I thought that Jalen Brunson could go off.
I did too. Yeah.
And I thought that Spencer Dinwiddie, we've seen him have 30-plus games, so I was thinking one of those two guys would. But to see Maxi Kleba have the game that he did when he'd been in a shooting slump, had the ankle injury, I just think it does a lot for his confidence going forward. And this team hit, franchise record 22 threes. They held Utah to under 30, and that's a team that shoots the three unlike any other. So, yeah, they've proven that they can beat this team without Luka. And to your point, so it's interesting now, right? Like the series is tied 1-1. So are you almost better off at this point resting him for game 3? Because I think we can agree if he's not playing Thursday, he's playing Saturday, right?
Because then either way, you're down a game, so you need him to even the series and steal one in Utah. Or if you win another game without him, then you activate him. You win again. You're on the verge of winning the series. To me, one of the fascinating parts of watching this team develop and now into the postseason is to see Jason Kidd's growth and his development. And having been here as long as I have, remembering when the Mavs drafted him as a player, and he went away, and then he came back and helped lead them to the title. And I may have mentioned this on the podcast. I know I've told you before that I remember doing a story with Jason Kidd at his home in the Bay Area after they drafted him.
That's crazy.
A million years ago, and talking to his parents and all that stuff. I mean, he was just an icon in that area, having gone to Cal and everything. But people mature and they learn, and he'd had a couple of stops as a head coach that didn't go well, and he was an assistant with the Lakers, and Vogel was really a great mentor to him, and LeBron loves Kidd. That's another thing we can talk about someday, probably, about whether that thing is possible, or whether LeBron to Dallas. Good God!
And then they're already talking about, can Jason Kidd be lured away from Dallas back to the Lakers?
Oh, wow!
I've just seen scuttlebutt out there about that. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, but I think Cuban hopes that this is his guy, that his Tom Landry, if you will, his guy who'll stay here for 10, 15 years and be the face of the franchise. But anyway, Kidd has had some bad moments. Probably shouldn't have had Luka in the game when he did in that last game against San Antonio, and Doncic got hurt. But he's had some good moments too. He outcoached Snyder in game 2 and just had Gobert kind of uncertain, defensively. They met one of the greatest defensive players the league's ever seen. He looked frazzled.
I made up that word the other day on the air. I was combining rattled and frazzled, and I said razzle on the air. So razzle is my new word that I'm now going to use. But what's amazing, your point with Rudy Gobert, because he was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, and Marcus Smart, the pride of Flower Mound, former Oklahoma State star, he won it. So I wonder if Rudy Gobert is using that as a little bit of motivation. But the thing that's amazing, Mike, to your point, is that they got out-rebounded by 19 in games 1 and 2. So the fact that they were still able to win game 2 the way they did, and Jalen Brunson, I mean, you just can't say enough about him. The way that Jason Kidd speaks about his work ethic, how he's a leader, how he's kind of been regarded as an underdog. He is going to get a massive payday, and guys earn their paychecks now in the playoffs. And you had guys all around the league commenting on how he went
Patrick
off.
Mahomes commenting on it on social media, all different sports. Kidd is a perfect coach for Brunson. I mean, just given the kind of player that Kidd was. I mean, Kidd is bigger and probably not as good a natural scorer as Brunson, but the consummate playmaker, and that's part of the reason Kidd and Doncic connect as well. But Brunson won 2 national titles in college. I mean, he's been in big situations before, but he struggled last postseason, and Carlisle cut his time way back. Well, you don't hear Rick Carlisle's name much anymore, do you? For a guy who was here as long as he was. Talk about being ready for a change. This franchise was. And Kidd's far from perfect, and by the time this is widely heard, who knows where this series will be, but it's a pretty salty start for this team.
And it's still going to be a series regardless if they lose on Thursday in game 3. And to your point too, just being around practice a few days last week, because that's another thing, we haven't been allowed to be in person at practice. So I was all ready to go, Mike, because I covered the Thunder for 6 years, and just to show you, there's a big difference in which these teams are run, right? Like when I covered the Thunder, we were not allowed to see anything in terms of practice. There was one practice where you were there, they were having a little 3-point shooting competition.
Right.
And to me, just seeing that dynamic, you say this is a fun team. Well, it's clear that these guys truly get along. I'm not just talking about teammates. I'm talking about actual friends. And so when you go back to the whole Kristaps Porzingis trade, and, I think that was blown a little bit out of proportion. I don't think that they were the best of friends. It just didn't work. But I think Jalen Brunson and Luka are really good friends. I mean, just all of them together. And when I had a chance to talk to Jason Kidd one-on-one, and I asked him, Mike's being a little, yes.
Oh, by the way.
I'm just dropping that.
I had a chance to spend a little.
It wasn't other reporters have gotten a chance to interview him one-on-one, but it was cool because I haven't really had a chance to get in front of him and be like, hey, I'm Sam, just because of the pandemic and all these things. And I asked, what is one thing that you took from the Lakers that you brought here to Dallas that you think has served you really well? And he talked about Frank Vogel and just how he's been a mentor to him, and not just the defensive identity stuff, but he said it's about having fun. And I think that can be an underrated element that we don't always talk about when it comes, to the NBA or frankly any sport, because it's all about winning in the playoffs. But you can genuinely see that this team likes being around each other, and I think a lot of that stems from Jason Kidd.
Well, and Kidd was ripped after his earlier head coaching stops, for being a guy who was too tough on his players. And so maybe he's found kind of the happy medium there. He's always going to be a little bit of a taskmaster, I think, just because of the type of guy he is. But now he has in the back of his mind, don't overdo it. Remember, we got to keep certain people happy. And
namely Luka.
It's all about that. It really is, isn't it? And whether it's your head coach having a relationship with him, whether it's having a guy like Boban on the roster who can keep things light.
Who is also really close with Luka, by the way.
Yeah, right. And as you said, he and Brunson get along. And that's important because Brunson's a guy who ideally has the ball in his hands a lot too. And there's only one basketball to go around. But you look at the times when they're both on the court, and quite often it's Brunson bringing the ball up and Luka kind of playing off guard momentarily before he ultimately takes over sometimes. But it's really an interesting dynamic there. And then you throw Dinwiddie in the mix. It's been said a lot.
And he hasn't had a breakout game yet.
He hasn't, and that could change things. But it's been said a lot, getting rid of Porzingis, you could argue either way maybe on why that had to happen. But what it did get them in Dinwiddie is another guy who can create, and that's made a difference for this team. So we'll see where this series goes from here. How are your allergies doing?
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? In my entire years of living, I don't want to say whatever, I'm 34. I don't care. People will figure it out. It's not some big secret. In my 34 years of living, I have never been bogged down more by my allergies than I have in this city. I slept until noon today. And I know, yes, we know I sleep. Because
you only usually sleep till 11:30.
Well,
so
it's
that's
just, because my mom always critiques me. It's
your mom's a nurse.
Right. But it's always she's like, well, if you went to bed, right when you got home, well, by the time we get home, it's 11:30, something.
You're all revved up.
I'm all revved up, so it takes me a few hours.
Excellent show we've done.
Yeah, the shows. If there's a game nights, I tend to have my adrenaline's up. I haven't slept well in this last year. So if you guys have any advice, remedies, or anything, I literally haven't slept well in the last year. But these allergies are now. My eyes feel puffy, itchiness, just my energy is zapped. I just haven't taken the Allegra stuff consistently. My mom's like, well, you need to take that.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Zyrtec, whatever.
It never works for me.
I think it goes one way or the other with people who move to Texas. But you lived in Oklahoma City too, and I would think the allergens would be largely the same.
They weren't.
Maybe
they never
not
bothered
when you
me.
go farther south. But it goes one way or the other. Either people have had them when they, I had them as a kid in the Midwest and as a young adult. Hay fever would just get me certain times of the year really badly. But now here, it really, knock on wood, hasn't bothered me much. And when it does, it's not like you're talking about. Sometimes I'll get a little dull headachy and stuff, and I think that's maybe from allergies. And I'm the idiot who still does his own lawn and all that, so I got stuff flying in my nose and all that stuff. But now I could tell it's sort of been bothering you. But you being you don't complain about it, and you just kind of fight through it. So
That's called sarcasm coming
not.
from Mike. I do complain a little bit,
you
but
don't complain as much as I would. My wife knows I don't suffer in silence when it comes to illness or injury.
I know. My mom, you know, the thing that's funny is that whenever I'm sick or not feeling well, it's just because I'm a little bit of a baby because I'm here alone. My whole family's not.
In case anyone's wondering.
I'm alone. My family is miles and miles away. So, you know, my mom is a nurse, and so growing up, she was always catering to me. And my brother thinks I'm the biggest. Even when full disclosure, I had, when I was home for Christmas break, I got COVID again. And I really was, I wouldn't even say I was milking it because I really didn't feel well, but my mom was really like catering to me, and I have to say, it just reminds me of how much you miss that.
Yeah, there's
she was
nothing
bringing
like
me
that. Oh, it's
treats
greatest.
and everything, and so now they all make fun of me. They don't think my tolerance is high, but I actually do have a very high pain tolerance, and this goes back to the days where, quick little story for you, since these pods are about story time, I had appendicitis in college, and that's probably the sickest I've ever been. There's only one other time. What did I have? I'm forgetting what that other virus is. Oh, I had meningitis.
Oh,
which,
my. Jeez.
Now, all right, let me start with the appendicitis. So it started, I was a junior in college, and thankfully I wasn't going anywhere for spring break because this literally happened a week out from spring break. And I woke up with like a pain in my stomach. It wasn't on my right side yet, which if you have appendicitis, it's on the right side. But then I started having a fever, and it progressively got worse through the day. My mom's like, take a bath, whatever. Did all of that. I skipped all of my classes, and my mom had a feeling, because then I was like, Mom, it feels like there's a pain on the right side. And she said at that moment she knew, but she didn't tell me because she didn't want me to freak out. I went to the University of Connecticut. They lived in Boston, so they were only an hour and a half away. So finally I go to the infirmary. That's what we called it, which sounds like a really scary place. And it kind of it was.
Something
because
from the 30s.
Yeah, our infirmary was really scary looking on the outside. So me being me, the pain, this was around 8 o'clock at night, and the pain is bad, but I loved this show called One Tree Hill back in the day. So it was a new episode.
Yeah, who didn't?
I refused to go to the infirmary until after the show. At this point, I'm in like fetal position, okay? Go to the infirmary. She presses down on my right side. I scream out in pain. Tell my mom. She knew that's what it was. So there was this hospital called Windsor Hospital, or Wyndham Hospital. And my mom did not want me getting operated on there because this hospital too seemed a little bit sketchy on the outside. She wanted me to go to Mass General, which earlier when I was little, I had another surgery. Basically, there was a piece of fatty tissue wrapped around my diaphragm, so it felt like I had this Charlie horse pain. That's another story.
We're going deep into Sammy's medical history here.
This is my medical history. I got operated on in Mass General, so they were afraid my appendix was going to burst at this point. So she's like, no, you got to stay. Meantime, that particular night, it was monsoon rain. I'm talking a horrible storm. So my mom and my dad and my brother are all driving to me, barely could see anything on the road. It took them like 3 hours to get to me. So meantime, I like needed my roommate to bring me to the hospital. And I'll never forget it because one of my other friends, Brittany, who was also my best friend, she was out with her friends, and I asked her, can you bring me to the hospital? She's like, well, Sam, I'm out right now. I'm like, okay. And so Brienne, who's one of my best friends, she brought me. We get into the ER. At this point, I'm like hunched over. I can barely stand. The people at the desk, they see how much I'm in pain. And the first thing they say, they don't look at me. I'm like in tears. They look to my roommate and say, oh my gosh, we love your glasses. Where can we get them? And at that point, I gave the death glare. Like, there are tears, Mike, like running down my face, literally in fetal position. I threw up, all of this stuff. They put me on a ton of morphine. It was 5 hours before I got operated on. My parents eventually got there, but then my mom, she had to go bring my brother and my dad back the next morning, but I don't remember her telling me that. So the next morning I wake up and no one is there, and I like lost it, because you're on all kinds of meds. Anyways, Sammy was fine. She needed a week to recover. I'm forgetting how we even got on this.
So now you're dealing with some allergies. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So the allergies don't seem like much compared to morphine and appendicitis and all that stuff.
I'm basically tough, Mike.
Obviously.
They don't call me Sammy the G for nothing.
Clearly you are. But yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to your allergy woes this time of the year. Heavy wind, in the spring, a lot of stuff blowing around. So hang in there, like your mom says. Try out some Zyrtec or Allegra or something.
Enough about me though. So Mike has a pretty big. At the end of May, I believe, you have a pretty big life event happening, which is why you were out of town for some days. You want to?
Our daughter Christina is getting married, and she's getting married at our family farm in Illinois,
which is amazing.
My wife's family farm.
Why did I think it was your family?
No,
why did I think
it was Ruth's family? It's been in their family for generations, and it's such a special place for Christina that she decided that's where she wanted to get married, and so. It's been a really interesting process because this is a real farm. This is cattle and corn and soybeans.
Wait, so
and all
there's
that
cattle
stuff.
and chicken on the farm there? Chickens?
Well, they're yes. To
Are there
answer
all
your
the
question,
animals?
there are. It's cattle, beef cattle.
Okay.
Beef cattle right
so you
now.
kill the cows?
We don't really need to get into that. That won't happen during the wedding. There will not be a ceremony during the wedding. But yeah, we've been going back and forth a little bit, and my wife more than me, frankly, to make sure that there are certain areas that are maybe a little more dressed up than they might normally be. But it's going to be, a fairly small wedding, but it should be a really special day, and just a place that means so much to our entire family, but our daughters especially.
Well, I have to ask you, being father of the bride, you have 2 daughters. So this is going to be your first daughter getting married. How do you feel about it? Are you?
I'll be a wreck. I'll be an absolute wreck that day.
Will you'll be
I'm
in full
not
tears?
kidding. I will, and I would like to pretend that I won't. But even when we talk about it now,
You feel yourself.
I can feel it, choking up. And Laura, our younger daughter, who's the maid of honor, is the same way. So that's not gonna help matters. But in terms of walking down the aisle, as it were, I don't think that'll be too difficult, giving her away and all that. But when it comes time to make a toast and say something, at the reception afterward, that's going to be tough to get through. But it's just, it's just one of those things. You fight through.
How is Ruth? Is she like that too? Is she going to be really emotional? Do you think you'll be more emotional?
I think I probably will be. The people who know us both would assume that I would be, but I have a feeling once that day comes, because this is where she grew up. She grew up on this farm,
right?
And so, not to get too heavy, but our parents are gone now, and Christina's grandparents are, and her grandmother. She spent so much time with her grandmother on that farm. Growing up, it's getting me right now, to be honest.
No, it's okay.
And we have a great photo of her grandma Marge walking her down the country road when Chris was probably 5 years old. They're holding hands, and it's just one of those things. It looks like something out of a painting,
Yeah.
And so those memories are going to come flooding back, probably for Ruth as well. But she'll have a lot on her mind in terms of trying to make sure everything goes well, because we've got a wedding planner and all that stuff. But still,
Mike did a lot of work on the farm.
There are still things that have to be done, and that we have to do ourselves, if you know what I mean.
I just remember you saying when she got engaged, and I can't believe how quickly. I remember saying, "Yeah, they're going to get married to this," and I can't believe it's almost here. I mean,
Isn't
you
it
just
crazy?
must be so proud.
I am. I'm very proud, and she's marrying a great guy, and they've been together for a long time, and I know they're really excited about that day, and it's going to be just an incredible day for both of our families. But yeah, it did get here in a hurry, and it was weird, during COVID and everything. In some ways, things dragged on, but then in other ways, you turn around and you're like, man, where did that time go?
Right.
So
I think what's really nice too, and I'm speaking on this because I don't live close to my parents right now. It's nice that Christina and her fiance, they live very close by, so you can see them a lot, and that's something I hide it pretty well. Like, I think just because I've had to live away for so long, and even since I graduated college, I never moved back home, so I had to get used to that dynamic fairly quickly. Now, I did live in Connecticut for a total of 6 years, including college. But, there are days I have here where I'm like, if I have a bad day, I'm like, oh, I wish I could just go to my parents' house and just stay over there for the night. So it's so nice that they're going to be right there.
It is. And I don't take that for granted, because when we moved down here, a long time ago, in 1994, we'd always lived in the upper Midwest close to our families as well. And one thing we always promised ourselves when we moved here is that we would get back a lot. And we always have. And that's just, and sometimes at the expense of seeing other more exotic areas of the country or the world. But it's always been important for us to get back 2-3 times a year to see family, especially during the holidays and, once in the summer. And I think that's a big part of the reason why our daughter wants to get married there is because she spent so much of her time there as a kid, and so I'm glad that's worked out that way.
Well, Christina and Laura are both beautiful
nice.
Women, so you should be proud. And you can tell that you're a girl dad. I know we've touched on this before, but you do. You relate to women, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you're around them all the time, and then you deal with me coming in here every day.
Don't understand them, but I don't know if anybody truly does.
It's called We're Onions, Mike, and we have lots and lots of layers that you just need to, slowly peel away. Like, I don't ever like being boxed into one thing. I think I'm many things, and on one day I might be one thing, and on the next day I'm the complete opposite. So accept me for what
I'm much more predictable. I wanted to go back to one thing you said earlier.
Yeah, go
about
back.
Not being able to sleep.
Yeah.
And it took me back because I used to be that way after doing the late news. I don't know, a long time ago we used to do like a sports cast during the news at 10 o'clock. I know that's a crazy concept. We used to do that. I'll tell you about it someday. But I would go home afterward, and that's back when we thought like a 2.5-3 minute sports cast was a big deal. It's funny. But I'd go home, and like you describe yourself now, I would be kind of wired, kind of geared up. And I would stay up till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's me.
Watch TV, whatever. But now, I swear to God, I go home, I change. If my wife's awake, I'll talk to her for a minute.
Into your jammies.
I change into.
He wears flannel night. I don't know that. I'm just
really
guessing.
T-shirt and gym shorts.
Okay,
if you
stop
must
there.
know.
The audience doesn't need to hear
That's
anymore.
Not gross. Well, it can be. But my point is, it's rare that I am awake after like 12:30 in the morning. And we get off the air at 11, and it takes me a half an hour to get home. So I go home, maybe let the dog out. That's not a euphemism. I mean, seriously, let the dog out. And then literally...
Poor thing has been holding it in for the whole night when Bruce's out of town.
But then I go to bed, and I'm out like a light. So
you'll tell me stories where Michael will be like, I was watching something on my phone with my ear pods in, and I fell asleep. I'm like, I am so jealous of you right now, because literally... I can't tell you. Actually, one night last week, I fell asleep before midnight. But generally, I am up between like 2 and 3 a.m. So if you ever see me tweeting, everyone's like, why are you up? Well, it's because I can't sleep. So if you ever want to have a Twitter combo in the early hours of the morning, I'm available.
Last night, I fell asleep. And I woke up at like 3 a.m. and something was playing on my phone that I had no idea what it was. And my glasses were all askew, like under my head, and it was just... I am the old man.
And then you have Gord on the bed with he and Ruth, and then the little kitten that's just completely taken over the Doocy household, right? You rescued the kitten, and now she's just at home, right? She loves life.
Oh, she's great. We have 2 cats. We've always been cat people, and I know some of the guys listening now, oh, man, cat, I hate cat. Sam claims that she's allergic to cats, whereas she really hates cats.
I am. So Mike's, I haven't met the kitten, but the other cat acts more like a dog. So I am, and for some reason.
The first time you were at our house, we're all sitting around talking, and Gordy wouldn't give you the time. Jordy is our dog's name. We call him Gordy sometimes. Wouldn't give you the time of day, and you were just dying for him to come over.
I was so upset.
But the cat wouldn't leave you alone.
The cat literally would like be rolling on its back, wanted me to like scratch her stomach. Gordy was just like, who the F is this person? I was so upset. But I'm like, I like the cat. I'm just saying I've always been a dog person.
But now the little kitten is fun, and the 2 cats get along great, so that's cool. And the dog just kind of ignores them, puts up with them. But yeah, it's a wild scene sometimes at our house.
What else can we tell you about our lives since we last chatted? I mean, nothing. I mean, it's just been pretty busy. I mean, what are we at? 30 minutes here? I mean,
getting there. Yeah,
this might be a good place.
Should we take a quick break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and
What else could we talk about? Maybe a little Cowboys?
Let's do
There's
it.
been some stuff going on with those wacky Cowboys this offseason.
There's always something. We'll be right back.
Whether you're born here or just got here, here's some news. In fact, more news than anyone in town. Always local, just like you. So welcome, locals. Your news is here. They start their morning before the sun rises and end hours after dawn. 6 straight hours of weather and traffic. Why? To make sure you have a good day. Evan and Chip, here for you. Good Day, 4 to 10 a.m. on Fox 4.
Welcome back, everybody. Free for All, the After Party, the podcast. As always, we thank you guys for joining us on this little excursion that we've decided to delve into, which we have a lot of fun with this, Mike. I mean, again, we're still new to this, but we'll find our flow, and I think I genuinely like our banter. You know, we do. We talk about random stuff all the time, and we always are like, oh, this is something we should put on the show.
Well, and I think it's funny because we had an example of this earlier today. We, for our TV show, for Free for All, we try to put stuff on that we think people are talking about. And not always, but a lot of times if we think it's interesting, we think that other people will. There was this video from this junior college baseball game, which by now you've seen probably,
yes, this video.
where the kid goes after the guy around in the bases. And we were talking about it in the office with Landry, the producer. And we're like, well, if we're talking about let's put it in the show. So that applies to the pod too, but maybe more so with some other stuff that we wouldn't have time for on TV. Let's touch on the Cowboys real quickly, and this is a serious topic, and I don't want to do 180 here, but I think it's worth discussing. I heard George Dunham on the ticket talking about it this morning, and I asked the same question on Twitter, and that is, why is Kelvin Joseph still on the Dallas Cowboys roster? I mean, he has admitted to being in the car with 2 individuals who are now charged in connection with a shooting death. And Joseph didn't go to police for a month after this incident. And now he's not only still on the team, but according to reports has been at workouts as the team has gotten together again starting this week to work out. It's just one more thing that this incredible offseason has produced for the Cowboys.
And it is a distraction, by the way. And it's not a good one.
It is. And for the life of me, I can't, and as I said on Twitter, I might educate me here. Tell me what I'm missing. What is it, because they absolutely think they can't get by as a player, as a team rather, without the player, Kelvin Joseph? Or does this go back to Jerry's mentality from the 90s as well, where he thinks he can rehabilitate guys and giving them second and third chances? I just don't get it. But it's been an awful off season for this team, and this takes it up another notch. I mean, it's wrong to clump this together with the other stuff necessarily. The cheerleaders thing and the Jerry's personal issues as well. But it's been one thing after another for this team.
And it seems, and I don't know how this compares to previous off seasons, Mike, because I know you've covered them again for a long time. But it seems like there's been more off the field incidences than there has been positive talk about how this team has improved and will get better. Kelvin Joseph thing, Stephen Jones talked on The Fan the other day and talked about how it's important to draft guys of high character, high caliber. And my Nana used to say this, and when I say this quote, I'm speaking very broad terms here, but she used to say, show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. And I think that there's a really good point to that. If you are around people who have questionable character and have gotten into trouble before, and you surround yourself with those types of people, chances are eventually something is going to happen that's negative. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but he had some prior history at LSU, I believe.
In college,
In college, so again, and this is a serious matter, and you have to wonder what the Cowboys' thinking is behind him. And I tend to think it's what you said with Jerry. He has a history of giving guys second, third, fourth chances, whatever it may be. But, yeah, I don't know.
I just don't know what circumstances could be involved in this thing that we don't know about.
Right.
That would
what
cause
else
you to say, oh, okay, well, in
him.
that case, let's keep him on the team. He's a guy we want to be associated with. I can't imagine that being the case, but I don't know how much more you can really say about that. The draft is coming up next week. We're going to be heavy into that, of course. The Cowboys
They have a lot of different
suddenly
needs.
have, I mean, they're
lot.
kind of in a position again where, you could go pass rusher, you could go offensive line,
lineman.
you could go wide receiver.
I
If there's
know.
one there, this Deebo Samuel stuff
That
is
would
out
be-
today, which is kind of intriguing too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Mike, to see. And I don't know that we'll see. There's always a question, well, how much better did the Cowboys get after the draft? That remains to be seen until we see them take the field. Because, again, none of us necessarily thought that Micah Parsons was going to turn out to have the star-studded season that he's had and will hopefully most likely continue along that path in his second year. But, again, the way they've underperformed for years and years at this point, it's going to be interesting.
It's funny. I'm kind of two minds when it comes to this team on the field, though, and I'm with you that obviously they've underperformed. And last year, that laying the egg in the playoff game the way they did was,
there's just no reason why they
an
shouldn't have.
embarrassment, I guess. That might be taking it a bit far. But it's, by the way, they did win 12 games type deal, and that counts too. So I a lot of people
Does it?
coming in. Well, we can go into that more. Coming into the season, there will be some who are predicting good, if not great, things for this team, and I can sort of see why. Now, I know they lost Randy Gregory on defense, the inconsistent, although at times spectacular, pass rusher. And Amari's gone now too, but I think CeeDee Lamb has superstar written all over him.
He does, and I
think
do.
that'll be fine.
I do think, again, they would talk during the season. CeeDee Lamb and Amari would have this friendly back and forth, like, not throw the ball to me, I'm getting it. I think I don't want to say CeeDee's been timid, but I think there are higher tiers to which we haven't seen him get to yet, and I think this is the year to where he's going to be like, I'm the number one guy, and I'm going to show out. And remember, ever since he got into the league, and I don't think you can take this slightly either, he was doing all kinds of off-season work with Dak. Like, since they drafted him, when they were in the pandemic and they couldn't do, have their normal sessions or whatever, they were at his house or on all these other fields working out together. So I think there's something to be said for that. Hopefully Michael Gallup will return, maybe not the first game, but early, hopefully in the month of September. And I think he's a really good player too, and hopefully he'll be at the same level, if not better than he was since he got that injury.
Obviously, the quarterback always has the most pressure on him of anybody on an NFL roster. But I look at Kellen Moore, and I think there's a lot of pressure on him coming into this season. I
Definitely.
think as the season went on last year, that offense just got less and less productive. And I've said this a lot on our show on TV. If I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm not leaving it totally in Kellen Moore's hands.
You're getting involved.
Because you're getting fired unless you make a playoff run this year if you're Mike McCarthy. And your history is as an offensive guru. So you need to get your hand in there and really have a huge say into how that offense is constructed.
Speaking of that, I saw that Sean Payton was I'm talking about Sean Payton now just because, he's not coaching football this year. Right. I saw that he was quoted on Twitter as saying he's very close to taking a studio job for one of the networks, and I saw someone say, yeah, it's easier to leave a studio job after 1 year. So I don't know if it was a colleague of ours or who said it, but I thought, hey, that's something to watch out for too, because a lot of those guys who do take those studio jobs, if something comes up, because now it just made me think of Bob Stoops now, because he's not going to be on Fox now because apparently the XFL's coming back and he's going to coach there again, and it's the timing, it's conflicting, so he's not so that's going to be something to keep your eye on as well if this team folds again in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's the draft is fun, and we'll be covering it closely here on Free for All.
F4A.
Starts Thursday. Thursday night.
F4A.
We'll be at the Star. I bet we'll be live at the Star.
I bet we will. So come and say hi, because there's always a ton of people out there.
Sure.
I think that's gonna.
How we doing? We all right?
I think this is a
that
good
was
place
fun.
for us to
That was fun. I
stop.
hope your allergies feel better. Listen to Connie. She'll steer you in the right
That's
direction.
my mom's name. We call her Cons. My friends call her Cons. Don't call her Mrs. Gannon. She hates that. We people from the north hate being called, or no, we hate being called ma'am. But I've adopted yes ma'am, no ma'am.
Hey,
Yes,
Landry's
sir, no,
back
sir.
from
Hey,
CBS.
I'm going to be so mad at Landry. So he's been telling me about these new like Oreo Cakester things. And if he pulls them out of that bag right now, I'm going to be mad because I'm trying to eat well. Oh, no.
Nice.
Darn it.
I told Dan, the weatherman, I was not going to go to Candy Mountain in the Weather Center tonight, but it's coming to me.
It is Temptation Island, okay, over in the Weather Center. You guys have no idea the treats that are over there every single day. Oh, my, what are you doing? He's pulling out Sour Patch Kids? Like, what are you trying to do? I just told you I have a gala to get ready for in 24 days, and I need to be good. All right, well.
I'm trying to get back to a size 6. Come on, Landry.
Yeah, so Mike and I are going to try to resist temptation, and that's where we're going to leave you guys.
All right, for Sammy the G, it is MFD. Thanks for being with us. We love you, and we'll talk to you next time.